I have to say I feel a little overdressed this morning. I would be better suited in shorts, but what a beautiful day and what a great pleasure to be addressing all of you. I want to talk to you today about the evolution of marketing, and in particular the use of big data in marketing, which is creating huge waves in the way that we communicate, the way that we target communications, and the way that we understand the communications that people want to receive. The technologies are advancing at a rapid pace, and I will try to give you an understanding today of where the state of the technology today and where it's going. First of all, I would just say a little bit about us. Who is Cambridge Analytica? The origins of the company, or the group of companies and the team, go back quite some time, and we've been working on the global stage, shaping behaviour for probably now approaching 25 years. Some of the founder members of the methodologies that we use. Way back at the time of the first free elections, in South Africa, we were helping to control behaviour within the townships. We clearly weren't working for the ANC. As anybody who remembers that election knows, it was a foregone conclusion that the ANC was going to win the election. Our role was to help prevent rioting and unrest in the townships and ensure that the election went off peacefully. And of course, more recently, we've been involved in the presidential elections in the US, where we've been helping to identify and persuade undecided voters as to which way they should vote. This led quite famously to a lot of publicity, and this cartoon here shows that Hillary was caught quite unawares by the advance of the technology that was employed in that election, and in particular in understanding where the undecided voters were and what were the issues that were important to them. So, we're disrupting traditional advertising and taking that from political and government markets into commercial communications today. And we're really developing this whole area of behavioural communications. In the old days, communications was about awareness. It was about sweet brand logos like happiness is Coca-Cola. Today, marketing communications are very much about understanding what are the drivers of behaviour in the individual who's receiving the communication, and talking to those issues which are important to the recipient. But of course, this has led to quite a lot of debate and a swirl of sensationalized reporting about what we are and what we're not doing. And this cartoon here from Le Monde newspaper is an illustration of that. Presumably, Cambridge Analytica is this blue godlike figure up in the top with the straw in the man's brain, controlling how he votes. I have to say it's not clear to me whether we're sucking or blowing from the brain, but there's a lot of sensationalized reporting, but the bottom line is that this isn't going away. This data analytics, targeted communications, behavioral communications is the technology of the future, and it's going to become more and more pervasive. Whether it's Google, whether it's Facebook, or whether it's Cambridge Analytica, this is the technology of tomorrow, and it needs to be used in the right way, the responsible way, but it's going to be used. So, this is Donald Trump, who famously said he didn't believe that data had any role. And in fact, he said that he is the ultimate TV celebrity, and he believed that it's candidates, quite rightly I should say, it's candidates that win elections, not data. And he was quite skeptical about this data processing machine. This was in May. This quote here: "I've always felt data was overrated. Obama got the votes much more than his data processing machine." That was in May 2016. In June 2016, he hired us. So what changed his mind? Now, I don't know if you can see this. This is a chart of the primary Republican candidates in the elections last year. The blue line on the top is Donald Trump, and you can see him increasing in popularity and popularity. This is up until April. But I would draw your attention, if I may, to the black line underneath. And the black line is Ted Cruz. And Ted Cruz is who we were working for at this time, going from 5% popularity to 33% popularity, and of course, well known now, being the runner-up in the primary Republican election. And that's what caused Donald Trump to say, "I want what he had." So what are we talking about? The methodologies we're deploying really sit in three areas. It's in the field of behavioral science, understanding why people think and feel and behave the way they do, both as individuals and collectively. Then there's data analytics, collecting big data, huge quantities of data, almost unimaginable quantities of data, and analyzing that using the power of computing and the methodologies of data science to spot the patterns and understand the drivers. And then it's targeted engagement. Digital communications today is changing the way that we communicate and the outbound communications go. It's now highly targeted, highly specific, highly tailored for the recipient. This is Sir Martin Sorrell. For those of you who don't know, he's chief executive of an advertising agency called WPP. And he talks here about, he doesn't like the word advertising. It's the legacy approach of media and art, not science. And he talks about the idea of actually that the whole industry is moving from the world of madmen to mathmen. Science is driving this industry now, and all of the big players are moving in that direction. So let me talk about the three legs of the stool in detail. First of all, behavioral science. I'm talking about communications that change behavior. If you look at this slide here, you'll see if you were lucky enough to own a private beach, then you might put this sign here up on the end of the beach, and it would successfully make everybody aware that you own a private beach. If you want to stop people going on your private beach, then the sign on the right-hand side will be far more effective. That's the message which has changed behavior. And audience segmentation. Everybody wants to segment audiences to understand. But the old-fashioned way of segmenting on demographics, segmenting on gender type, because all women are female, therefore they want the same communication. Or because all African Americans are black, they want the same communication, is of course a nonsense. Segmenting the audience by age, or by colour, or by gender, or by hair colour is a nonsense, or where you live is a nonsense. The drivers of behaviour are far more deep-rooted. Now, this, on the right-hand side, is a very bad drawing of an iceberg. And I apologise for the drawing. But at the top of the iceberg, above the water, you can see geographics, consumer insights, demographics, and media. And of course, these are factors in segmenting the audience. But underneath the surface, there are so many psychographic drivers of behaviour. Self-congruity, motivation involvement, locus of control, sociability. These are the features of the personality that drive behaviour. And so what we're aiming to do is we're aiming to identify and classify those psychological drivers of behaviour in order to create communications that affect change. So at Cambridge, we've rolled out a long-form quantitative instrument, which is based on the leading edge of psychological research and classification. And it's called OCEAN, or the Big Five. Oops, that didn't work. The Big Five, OCEAN. O stands for openness. C stands for conscientiousness. E stands for extroversion. A stands for agreeableness. And N stands for neuroticism. These are the 5 dimensions of personality type. For those of you who have done a Myers-Briggs test, if you like, this is Myers-Briggs on steroids. And by taking the OCEAN scores and classifying people's dimensions in these 5 characteristics, we can identify 32 distinct personality types. And with those 32 distinct personality types, we can tailor communications that will play to interest in the behavior of the recipient. So let me give you an example. 2 women, similar demographics. They're high income, successful, very well educated, they're married, and they both have children. And traditional advertising says, we'll communicate to them in the same way. But actually, if you look at it, the female on the left is high in openness and high in extroversion. And the female on the right is high in conscientiousness and high in agreeableness. And so what that means is that the 2 women of the same age, of the same demographic, actually will respond quite differently to messages. If we want to communicate to the woman on the left, who's an extrovert, then we want to give her a message which is something aspirational. Yep. So there's an illustration of an American Express advert. We'll make sure you still look great. It gives us something to aspire to, and is the center of social and lifestyle oriented behavior. Whereas on the right, the woman who's high in conscientiousness and agreeableness, we want to give us a message which is family-centric, which is traditional values, providing security through group decision-making. So she gets safety, and the other person gets, the other lady gets aspiration. Those women have the same demographic profiles, and by traditional advertising, segmenting on demographics, this illustrates the weakness of it. Let me give you another example. Actually, I've got a couple of car examples in this presentation, and being in the home of Volkswagen, I'm very conscious that none of them have got a Volkswagen car in them. So I trust if anybody here is from Volkswagen, you'll forgive me and take it as a stimulus to perhaps come and talk. So here's a man, single, high income, he is an Amex user, high in conscientiousness. So for him, we want to talk to him about the features of the car, the reliability, the fuel economy, the efficiency of it. This is what will drive his behavior. But another man here, who is high in openness and high in extroversion, another extrovert, same demographics, we want to talk about the driving experience. This is what will stimulate him. This is what will motivate him. That's behavioral science. Then we go to data analytics. And this is the second methodology I want to talk about. As I said before, communications is fundamentally changing. It's now being much more audience-led. It's now being bottom-up. It's now one-to-one. My children and your children will never understand that traditional advertising used to give the same message to everybody. Every message they receive through every device they receive it today is targeted at them. Some with increasing and some with decreasing levels of sophistication, but it's all directed at them. And this is where the sector is going. So, what is big data? Well, first of all, there is demographic and geographic data like age, gender, religion, education. But then there's also the psychographic data, so advertising resonance, consumer data, lifestyle data, buying patterns. And then there's personality data. the ocean characteristics I've talked about, but also those characteristics which are particularly relevant to persuasion, so reciprocity, scarcity, authority, fear. For example, in America, we have around, up to 5,000 data points on every American of voting age. And if you can imagine, and I don't know if you can see this at the back there, and I apologize, but imagine that that's the Cambridge Analytica data set that we have on the population. And imagine that we then engage with a client and we take their data and we combine it with our data, so we now have a very rich picture of the target audience. And then we have proprietary data, data that we go out and we research and we gather. And what that means is we create, through cleaning up that data and matching that data, we create an informed demographic, behavioral, psychological, and psychographic map of the target audience. What do we see? Am I out of time? Sorry? 2 minutes. Okay, all right. So I'm going to skip the dental product example, which is not the best bit of this presentation, and talk about the third leg, which is targeted engagement. And now targeted engagement is cross-platform and multi-channel. It's direct mail, it's email, and it's SMS. And what does that mean? What's the value in all of this? Well, it was Bill Harvey who said that a 10% increase in purchase target density will generate 7% increase in incremental sales. That doesn't sound like very much, but if you think about the billion-dollar industry we're talking about, these numbers are huge. And it's all about making the outbound communications more efficient, hitting home with the right message to the right person to affect behavior. And it's not just in digital advertising. This is a TV targeting workflow. So we take set-top box data, we analyze it, we find out who watches what programs, we match that against our target audiences, and we direct outbound advertisements and communications to the programs where the majority of our people, of the people we want to communicate with, or the people of a particular personality type or issue type are watching. And that's just linear TV. So for example here, if we look at this chap here, The Protector, father taking his son surfing, we can see that it's high in conscientiousness and high in agreeableness, and actually the pre-game rush is the advertising slot where we want to target communications to him. Whereas the innovator group, we're looking at Saturday Night Live, because they're high in conscientiousness and high in extroversion. So that's just linear broadcast TV. Excuse me, imagine what we can do with addressable TV that's coming. And be clear, all the money is going this way. All of the major players are now investing heavily into this area, whether it's Walmart, Ogilvy, or Havas. They're all acquiring or investing and building their big data analytics capability in order to create communications that affect behavior change. Thank you very much.